Hello, I'm Jayanto Chatterjee from IIT Kanpur. We are discussing management of field sales. This is the last session of our third week of the 15th lecture, and we are concluding our discussion set on sales negotiation. In the last session, we discussed about the quantitative aspects for setting sales negotiation targets, understanding what is the logically chargeable price, the understanding of the perceived price concept. We understood the importance of relationship value, which can also give us some clue with respect to setting prices for long-term customers and giving some credit to the referral value and the long-term customer qualitative values, which should influence your quantitative valuation aspects. Today we are going to discuss the mechanism of negotiation, which fundamentally is actually how you handle buyers' concerns during the final stage of the selling process, and the objections the customer will often come up with, and how you handle those objections. What should be your strategy as well as what should be your tactics in negotiation. So negotiation is basically a working to reach an agreement that is a win-win solution, that is mutually satisfactory to both buyer and seller. Any negotiation which actually leaves the buyer with a level of dissatisfaction will have long-term negative implications. So in trying to make a short-term win by hook or by crook is no longer the objective of a 21st century salesperson. So in planning for the negotiation, therefore, this is what you will be your strategy, that anticipate buyers' concerns, review the common types of resistance that may come from the buyer, review methods of negotiating buyers' resistance, and prepare a negotiation worksheet. The activities, this is the strategy part, and the tactical part of it, that means what will actually happen during negotiation, will need recognize and understand verbal and non-verbal clues. This is something that we have discussed in previous sessions about the importance of unstated communication or non-verbalized customer communication, which you can understand if you improve your ability in interpreting non-verbal signals and clues. And also in the negotiation, you have to validate the problem that one is trying to resolve, develop the points of agreement where both parties get a win-win feeling. And some no-nos in negotiations are that you definitely do not allow polarization to happen, because the polarization will often lead to anger, and anger is something that is detrimental to a good negotiation. And also during the negotiation process, be alert for some clues that will be indirectly presented by the customer, which are your signals for going for closing the deal. Okay. Obviously, that means that these are some common sense stuff, that planning for the formal negotiation, you gather information before, decide your team composition, and decide that whether you are going to go in a team or you are going to go in an individual, because at different stages of negotiation or different stages of the sale, there are different roles that can be played by individuals and teams. So in the early stage, there are certain opening stages where the individual approach is much better. But then as the case develops, we may often have to have teams brought in to support. Like for example, in opportunity identification in a large software contract sale, the initial part may be performed by account managers at an individual level, but when it starts the negotiation of a particular case, of a particular opportunity, then you will have to bring in your technical people, the people who have been working with the same customer from before to provide actual performance data, how your company has performed with respect to set goals and have exceeded the goals and so on. So you will have to have your technical team, your performance team or software development team representative. Different people will come, and that will improve the negotiation status as well as the quality of the negotiation. Understanding the value of what you are offering is obviously kind of tautological. And these goals, prepare an agenda, review adaptive selling technique. These are all things that we have discussed before. This is just a slide which allows you to recap and put it all together at this stage when we are understanding negotiation. Two very important concepts in negotiation. One is called BATNA, that is the best alternative to negotiated agreement. That what negotiated agreement is something that the current ruling price and the logically chargeable price, so something which is in between, right? This is something that we discussed yesterday. But BATNA tells us that we should also try to look at that what alternatives will be acceptable to you if your negotiation does not succeed. That means if you are not able to at all get anything above the current ruling price level, even if you are offering something superior, like we discussed the RF steel versus high carbon steel case yesterday, then what is your alternative? Do you leave that case, or do you still pursue? Do you accept the current ruling price level even if you are offering a much superior product because of some other consideration like relationship, referral, etc.? These are the things that are important to understand, that what is your BATNA or best alternative to negotiated agreement. And also you have to, just like you have to understand that what alternatives will be acceptable to you, you should understand that what alternatives will be acceptable to your customer if their side will not succeed, then where are you? Obviously that leads us to the next concept, which is ZOPA, zone of possible agreement. And the zone of possible agreement, if you remember the model that we were discussing yesterday, is the zone between the current price level and the logically chargeable price calculated by calculating the performance improvements that you can bring in. So also that means it is the difference between the seller's walk away point and the buyer's highest willingness to pay. So if you remember, we had this cost of goods sold, then the total cost, then the prevailing price or the current price level, right? So the current price level may be your walk away point. That means you will not accept for an improved product price which is lower than the current inferior products, right? So that is your walk away point, and the perceived value by the customer, that point in between that ruling price versus the logically chargeable price, that in between point, that is something that may be the customer's walkaway point. The customer will not pay more than the value perceived by him or her. So this understanding of this zone of possible agreement is very important. An estimation of that is very important before you get into the negotiation stage. So these two important concepts are summarizing actually most of the theories and practices of negotiation. As we discussed, sales negotiation in most cases in B2B sales definitely involves a lot of objection handling. But remember that if your setting has been good, which means that you have actually prepared the field, the customer has already an inclination towards your solution. If not the whole team from the customer side, you have definitely your coach and your supporters within the customer's team who are positively inclined to your proposal. In that scenario, you can understand that when the customer says, oh, your price is too high, that actually is a clue for you to articulate the value that you offer by bringing in the benefits and cost saving that your solution offers. So remember that RF steel versus high carbon steel case. So the scrap reduction by RF steel solution or the throughput improvement by labor saving by the RF option are opportunities for articulating that additional value that your solution is offering in relationship to this price too high. Of course, you know that this happens every day. You go to the market to buy a shirt and you will usually as a buyer say, no, this price is too high. And the seller will say, oh no, look at this material, or look at the shine of this material, or look at a feel of this material, or this will actually retain its color. In fact, the color will become better as you wash the fabric more and more, or it will become, the material will become softer, easier to on your skin, or it will actually absorb sweat. All of these will be brought out by the seller as value articulation. So that's the normal response to usual objections like price too high. Or if the customer says, okay, I have understood what you are trying to say, but I'll think about it and then I'll get back to you. So don't let it go at that stage. Actually, when the customer says, think about it, I will think about it, then that's a signal for you to give in more inputs with respect to comfort, provide proof or references. Basically, when the customer hesitates, that's the point where you have to bring in confidence building facts and figures to create better comfort. If the customer says, oh, okay, but this is beyond my level, I'm going to talk to my boss. Again, that's a signal that you need to provide information that reduces the risk perception and enhances the benefit perception. So that's the signal for risk reduction benefit. Then comes, oh, I have seen your offer, but we have to compare with more quotations. So we have to get some more offers. Which means it's a signal for you to establish, you don't want to enhance the competition. You don't want the customer to spend more time to get more quotations. So you again use your presentations on targeted solution, the value you are offering, the benefits you are offering. So again, this is an opportunity to focus on benefits and advantages and highlight the one-to-one match that your solution offers with respect to customers' problems. If the customer says, you see, currently I'm buying from company XYZ and we are very happy, I don't see any reason why I should consider an alternative solution. If your buyer's team have elements of people who are your coach or your supporters within that team, then when this kind of objection comes that, we are happy with our current solution provider, then that's actually something that you need to, in a subtle way, challenge. Because obviously the whole discussion has taken place and has come to this particular state because the customer has a vague feeling of dissatisfaction with the current level of supply, current solution. So this is an opportunity again for you to highlight your differentiation, how your RF steel solution is so much more superior with respect to high carbon solution, the scrap reduction, the throughput improvement, the better processing time, and all those things that you have already unearthed or analyzed with facts and figures. Those will have to be put forward again. And sometimes you may be facing a sales situation where you have some bad history. Maybe you did not perform that well, or you kind of failed in some previous installation. Don't give up. This is still can be a situation where you can recover out of it if you actually offer sufficient proof of change. I remember that in my own sales experience, we had an excellent new opportunity from a very large customer. But to the same customer, 2 years before, we had supplied a small equipment, which was actually an insignificant equipment used in their laboratory and not in their production process. That equipment actually malfunctioned and really did not come up to the customer's expected level, which also possibly because we had not calibrated their expectation with respect to what was practical. But we established that that is a case not exactly comparable with this particular equipment that was under discussion at this stage. There we actually established that what kind of good installations we already had and other customers' premises, the performance that were obtained from those installations. So with facts and figures, and of course we provided a demonstration of the new motor drive system and established that the bad history is forgettable. So you see, all of these objections and the responses to that depend a lot on providing facts, providing figures, providing statistics, providing performance data, reference data. So this particular table is actually obtained from a research article or a practitioner's article as well. Is called Hide and Seek, or the objections are a yes about to happen. Excellent title. Objections are yes about to happen. That means the objections are often apparently negative signals that are subtle clues to convert them into positive supporting thoughts in the customer's mind. One caveat there is that first of all you must create a positive ambience within the buyer's team for you, at least some key people in the team must be inclined towards you. Otherwise, whatever facts and figures you will try to provide, that can be blown away by just sentiments, negative sentiments. So sentiments should be positive. Then if you bring in facts and figures about better performance, you will be in a good place. Again, some of the golden rules for the successful formal negotiation are understanding of the problem. Again, you will see this is a summarization of many points that we have discussed in the previous week's session. So understanding of the problem, creating alternative solutions that can add value, periodically review acknowledged points of agreement. Every time there is some agreement, make that very explicit, articulate it, put it on the table so that everybody remembers, so, okay, up to this point we all agree, and then, okay, but this is the next stage. So it becomes, the negotiation process should be a gradual build-up. And this is very important, the last but one point, that negotiations, because they are built up, the build-up is somewhat like a pyramid. So initially at the base, you may be spending a lot of time on objections which the customers also know are kind of infructuous or routine, like price is too high, or I don't think we can use this kind of equipment and so on. So those are routine objections and they will be there. But the real crux of the negotiation will happen in 20% of the time. So if you are actually discussing for 100 minutes, in the last 20 minutes or somewhere in the middle 20 minutes will determine that what are the key points based on which the customer might finally agree with you. So understanding therefore these crucial moments which become the building blocks are very important, and you have to understand that those initial warm-up discussions, even though they are routine objections, are important because they lay the foundation of the pyramid. But obviously much more important are to have proper facts and figures and the positive ambience, so that you can combine the two, the positive inclination towards you with supporting facts and figures to drive the negotiation towards you. This is it may not be really visible, but you can download this negotiation worksheet, which you should write out with your team and all agree before you get into the negotiation. This is actually kind of looking into customers' needs, time, price, source, and all these issues. And the example that is given may not be at all relevant for your industry. But what is important is to understand that to develop these columns, that what are the possible customer concerns, not the routine ones necessarily, but more crucial ones, and then the type of concern that can be classified actually normally with respect to need, time, price, and source. And then based on that, you develop your possible responses. Okay. This worksheet development is a good preparatory process before the actual negotiation starts. To create that sheet, understand these 5 common types of buyer concern. They relate to product, they relate to service or after sales performance. They may relate to time, time taken to deliver, time taken by the product to perform a certain process, various aspects of time, and of course price. And some of the things that we can easily see also, that direct denial, which is actually refuting the opinion or belief of a prospect. The customer says, I believe that your product cannot deliver this kind of performance, or I believe that your product failed in XYZ manner in ABC installation. If you actually attack that point, you may often create a polarized situation. So better is something that is, starts like I believe, I feel, are points which can be best countered by politely bringing out facts and figures. Also, it is always better to provide a little flexibility in the way you respond, that maybe you can even say, oh, I understand your point, or maybe earlier this was correct, but now you look at our new model and look at these features and benefits, etc. So this is what we call indirect denial, where you bend a little, acknowledge that the prospect can be partially correct, and don't create a polarized situation. And methods of creating buyer concerns, negotiating buyer concerns are, focusing on superior benefit, providing the demonstration. This is like, for example, a picture showing a test drive of a car, which is actually a demonstration to show the superior benefits of a particular new car model. And you should have good response to the possible questions and third-party testimony, etc. These are some very nice tactical inputs. Like this one is called feel, felt, found. These are actually how you empathize with the customer's, client's concerns. The customer expresses concern about the complexity of new software, and the salesperson says, I understand how you feel. You see, this is the feel. Or many of our customers actually felt the same way initially. So the felt. And until they started using this software and found it quite easy to master. So the feel, felt, found is a sequence of response to a customer concern. So sometimes you can actually use these three keywords, feel, felt, found, to construct your sentences which you will use in response to certain classes of objections, which are normally objections with respect to not a particular feature, but it will be usually towards an impressionistic bundle of facts and emotions, which a customer may have. And particularly it is often found with respect to a new product introduction. New may not be new to the world, but new to a particular customer, like a new software system or communication system. Some of the things that you must do overcoming price objections are do clarify price concerns with more questions. The more questions will unearth not only straightforward objections, but underlying concerns which you can answer. So often actually price concerns are actually concerns for risk related concerns. So you can actually, through questions, you can unearth the concerns and identify the risk points and provide facts and figures to allay those fears. Do add value with a cluster of satisfaction points, and never make price as the focal point of sales presentation. In fact, in most sales presentation, price need not be included. Customer will immediately say, okay, I understand all of this, but tell me what is the price. But you should try to postpone that discussion definitely, because remember the FAB model, the advantages and benefits will have to be crystallized in the customer's mind before you come to price. So advantages and benefits crystallized through the features of the product, how it is superior to the existing solutions, etc. Those are to be emphasized before. If you immediately get dragged into the price discussion, you may actually not be able to establish the benefits and advantages. So if you remember that model of current price, perceived price, and logically chargeable price, that gap, so you may be actually dragged to the current price level if you get into the price discussion too early in the negotiation process. Obviously, very, very important is to establish the that high carbon steel versus RF steel that we discussed. So they are actually the two high points where the reduction in the processing time and reduction in scrap. The importance of those should be established first, because just a positive factor by itself is not a clinching factor for a deal. Those factors should also be highlighted with respect to their importance in the overall cost and business perspective of the customer. So how the reduction in processing time and reduction in scrap can improve the TQM of total quality management of the customer, how it can improve the customer's ability to deliver on time better products, and so on. So articulate your advantages and benefits in terms of the overall business improvement of the customer in a subtle way, not too aggressive way, to create the ambience before you get into the price situation. So remember that the customer may try to actually say, okay, I understand all your blah blah, but let's discuss the price. And that is something that a customer may use as a strategy, and your objective will be to definitely allow sufficient time for that initial discussion to establish your advantages and benefits. And this is often obtained, this ability to get some more time to talk about advantages and benefits is often obtained if you actually use some kind of demonstration. The demonstration may be used, the product itself can be brought to the discussion table if it is suitable. But if suppose it is a very large table, then in today's world, you can take advantage of audio-visual presentation where you can actually show how that machine is performing at some installation, and you can have people talking about the success they have obtained from the product, the advantages they have obtained from the product. So referrals and positive feedback from existing or earlier customers and the performance of the equipment, all of that can be very nicely packaged in a short, hard-hitting audio-visual depiction. And those should be definitely used where physical demonstration is not yet possible. And sometimes people say that an audio-visual presentation may be better than a demonstration, because sometimes the demonstration can have some glitches, but in the presentation you can actually highlight the best aspects, and then you can follow it with a demonstration. That will always be a better strategy. So the better strategy always is to try to build up the positive feelings about your solution step by step, like a pyramid, so that when you actually go in for the closing, you have already created the ground. And professional, just like we are discussing sales management, there will be a different course about purchase management. And just like we are discussing about strategy and tactics of negotiation for the salesperson. Similarly, there can be a session on strategy and tactics for the buying person. So the professional purchasers know what kind of tactics to use to get the best price and the deal. So they will use the budget. See, we understand all your points, but our budget will not allow. See, we can only pay 3.5 million rupees, and you are asking for 6 million rupees. So really, we don't have any meeting point, and so on. So these are, usual tactics. So you have to have your strategy to counter these. So the customer may say, look, we can only give you 3.5. That's our budget. So you take it or leave it. Or, okay, we understand that you are wanting 6 million and our budget is 3.5. So let's settle at a point in between. Let's say 4, right? Now, this is actually a technique, this trying to come to a middle point, or what we introduced as a concept called ZOPA, Zone of Possible Agreement. That is something that is already there in the customer's mind as well as it is there in the seller's mind, if both parties have analyzed the situation from before. So, it can get there if both parties are progressing towards that possible agreement point. Or sometimes customer may say, you agree to this 3.5, but because look at the reference value you will get. Because a company like ours, the prestige it has in the market, if we are your buyers, how many new cases you will get? All of these are, say, accept the lower price now because you will profit from it later. Or sometimes the customer will say, okay, if we are satisfied, then this will be followed by 5 more opportunities. So you should accept the lower price. These are all usual strategic approaches by the buyers, and you have to think about the responses. Sometimes the responses may be accepting the point. Like if a customer says, okay, see, now I am paying you 3.5 million rupees, but I have 5 more cases and I will actually decide those cases in your favor if your equipment performs well at the first installation. So this is an opportunity where you can actually get next cases at a very low sales and marketing cost if you have become a single solution, preferred solution for the future requirements. But on the other hand, you should know that if it is a public company and they are not able to buy on the basis of some preference, they have to go each time through the tendering process and go to the lowest price bidder. Then even if the customer says, you see, I will be positively inclined towards you, you have to take that commitment with a bit of a salt. And lastly, remember that negotiation has some cultural variants. So the way you will negotiate in say Middle East will not be the way you will negotiate in Germany, or the way you negotiate with a German customer may not be the way you can negotiate with an Indian customer, because in some places top management may take all the decisions and it will be very individual driven. In some cases, it will be very team driven. That's usually people point out that negotiation is Germany is very dominated by some prominent, powerful individuals of the organization, whereas negotiation in Japan is always a very large network of discussions. So there will be number of people on the buyer side, and one will have to aggregate their satisfaction before a deal can be reached. So these different cultural variants, it will also vary from organization to organization. In some cases, some organizations, say an organization like Coca-Cola or IBM or 7-Eleven, They will have buying processes and buying systems standardized across the globe. And they will often actually use satisfaction they have obtained or dissatisfaction they have experienced in another country when you are trying to make a sale for a project in India. So these cultural variants, organization to organization, geography to geography, understanding of relationships of the current buying unit with respect to other possible influencing elements will have to be looked at. So that's kind of the concluding aspect, and this concludes our 2 sessions on negotiation. There can be many more questions on negotiation, and I will welcome your questions in the forum, and we will respond to that with a live session if necessary, if we get sufficient number of good, interesting questions. Okay, see you then at the forum. Bye.